Hello, and welcome to our panel on how to be a social media standout. I'm Hannah Cox, and I am the content manager and brand ambassador for the Foundation for Economic Education, and I am so excited to welcome you here today. I am going to be our moderator, and I have to tell you, I am so excited about the two young women we have joining us, Olivia Rondo and Kaylie Keim. You may recognize them from their profiles on social media. And for the next hour and a half, we are going to dig into what it takes to become a top tweeter, an Instagram influencer, or just a social media standout in general. There's so much that I think we can learn from these two on how to build your own brand, how to use that brand to make career inroads, and incorporate creativity and entrepreneurship throughout the process. We're also going to examine how to navigate the pitfalls of big tech and to being a young influencer online. We'll look at how these two have managed to overcome algorithm barriers, haters, trolls, and what characteristics are needed to follow in their footsteps. So without further ado, I'm going to ask each of them to take a few minutes and introduce themselves, and then we'll move into our panel from there. And we will leave about 30 to 40 minutes at the end for questions, so make sure that you think of some things as we progress throughout their talks. Olivia, I'm going to kick it to you first.
Hello, I'm Olivia Rondo. I guess I would fall into the top tweeter category. On my resume for that, I am about to hit 56,000 followers on Twitter, and I've been on Twitter since the beginning of 2018, so it's only been a few years, and I did see a lot of sudden success. I wouldn't say I joined social media or joined Twitter to become an influencer or to become somebody notable, but it just kind of happened overnight. I went from 200 to 10,000 followers literally in 48 hours. So I was just kind of launched into this, and so it's been a learning curve. But my main focus of my page is I like to talk about politics. But I think the main reason why I blew up so quickly and why people continue to follow me is because I make it very personable. I'll talk about other aspects of my life, including my career as a collegiate wrestler, which a lot of people find it interesting, as it creates a sort of intersection between libertarian or conservative politics and athletics, which people, I guess it's not a very common thing to see online. So I think that was what started it. But as I said, it's been a learning curve. It's definitely had to deal with haters and trolls, as Hannah mentioned before. And you're going to make mistakes. But as I've progressed, I've learned how to use my platform for good and use my platform to provide myself with entrepreneurship and opportunities, such as even writing for fee. That was kind of brought to me via Twitter, and so many other opportunities have been as well. So I am very grateful for the opportunity to speak on that, and hopefully to provide some insight onto how other young people or just people in general can use their platforms to create opportunities for themselves and to get their message out there.
Olivia, one thing you told me when we were talking about this previously is that you actually sort of began your social media career on Instagram. And you said that you sort of approached that from a place of feeling like your views weren't being represented. Can you talk a little bit about how you just sort of first started posting and what that environment was like, and how you made the decision to then move over to Twitter?
Yeah, so at the time, this was maybe 2017, I was not ready to attach my opinions to my name, so to speak. So I was actually managing an Instagram page called the Black Conservative Movement, and it had a lot of followers. I think maybe like 50 or 60,000 followers at the time. And I would do Instagram lives on that account, but I wouldn't post anything on my personal account because at the time, I mean, it still is unpopular, but at the time especially, it's very unpopular for a woman. It's very unpopular for a minority or a woman of color, however you want to put it, to support these right-leaning beliefs. And I was supporting a lot of mostly Republican politicians at the time, and I was supporting a lot of Republican or at least right-wing ideologies. And so I would do these live streams that were always very controversial. A lot of people would watch, and eventually people from my main Instagram page found out about this. And so at this point, I was like, let me just go to Twitter, because I was talking about a lot of Donald Trump's tweets at the time, and I couldn't have any way to see them besides screenshots that ended up on Instagram. So the main reason I even made a Twitter in the first place was because I was tired of doing all these controversial live streams. I thought I was ready to actually make my own political page, and I wanted to see what was going on, because everything interesting political happens on Twitter, more so than Instagram. So that's kind of how I started. And again, I wasn't trying to really make a name for myself on Twitter per se, but like you said, Hannah, I just felt so alone in my beliefs. I wanted to connect with other people who may share my beliefs, or other people who were just black or were a woman and not a Democrat, because that was just the category I put myself into unknowingly, just because election. And at this time, I was in high school. I was literally a child, a teenager, and I still felt vilified for my beliefs amongst my peers. So it started off as definitely an outlet, and I guess people liked what I had to say. People thought I was unique, and I was. I'm not going to act like there are a lot of minorities or women who supported Trump or are right wingers now. So it is a little bit of a novelty, but I think I ended up gaining more followers than just the initial 10,000, because I did provide a sense of nuance, and people got to see me kind of grow over the years from feeling alone and out of place in my ideology to feeling okay with being independent and not really fitting in a particular box.
You know, I definitely think you were an outlier just in the sense that you were a high school student who felt really strong in their political convictions, and you had the spine and the guts to really put yourself out there and to start saying what you believed. And, you know, we encounter lots of full-grown adults who don't have that kind of courage or that kind of grit. And so I think that's pretty interesting and commendable. And certainly the time period at which you were really getting active is probably one of the most fictitious, controversial times to have been in politics in my whole life, and probably in most people's lifetime. So I think that takes a lot of grit, and I think that's fantastic. And I think people tend to respond to authenticity, and they respond to people who are upfront about who they are and who are really engaging in that way and getting to follow you on social media. I see you do that every day, and it's really incredible to watch. I think you are well beyond your years and where you're at with your ideology and your ability to express it, and to also help galvanize other people to follow in those same footsteps and to start exploring things. So I think, you know, being an individual standing on your own is always something that's worth pursuing, but a lot of people want to be a part of the crowd and fade back into it. I'm curious, when you first started really seeing some traction on your social media, you know, did you get your first 10,000 followers overnight, or was it more of a slow build? What was sort of the catalyst that really revved things up for you?
It was literally overnight. It might have been 48 hours, but like in a sense, it was literally overnight. The way it started out, I maybe had like 200, maybe even less than that. For the first couple of months of me being on Twitter, I would usually just, you know, retweet. I wasn't really posting a lot of original thoughts, or maybe I would reply to somebody, but nothing really gained traction. And I saw some other influencers that I had followed at the time, who were black and not Democrat, or maybe black Republicans. And I felt like, wow, like there's actually a community of people on here who I can relate to. And literally all I did was I posted a picture of myself with the caption, "People will call me a sellout, a Uncle Tom," you know, all these racial slurs directed at people who are not liberal, who may support Trump, who may be Republicans, maybe libertarians, just, you know, anything like that. And that I basically wouldn't stand for. Like, I didn't care, you know? And that tweet went super viral. I can't remember the final count. It definitely had upwards of 20,000 likes on it. And that just kind of launched. I literally woke up and I had like 10,000 followers. And I was like,
Wow.
oh my God. Like, it was a complete accident. I was mainly just trying to find other people who felt the same way, because I was seeing like, you know, famous like black Republicans. Like at the time I was seeing people like Kimberly Klacik or like Candace Owens, and I was like, wow, like there are black women who are right wing. So that's basically who I was trying to find, just like other girls or other, you know, minorities my age. But I apparently made a lot of friends and fans on kind of like the MAGA side of Twitter. So that was my fan base for a long time, probably a year and a half to 2 years. Um, and then about 2 years ago or a year ago, I started exploring more libertarian ideals. Currently, I wouldn't consider myself super right wing. I'm actually not a registered Republican and never was. I'm an independent. So while a lot of my follower base or fan base are people I picked up from being just hardcore anti-liberal, which kind of put me into the MAGA camp, I actually lean more conservatarian, if you will. Like, I do definitely hold some right-wing beliefs, But a lot of them I wouldn't even, enforce with the state because I lean very libertarian as well. And so, for a lot of Republicans, that's a turnoff. So lately, the majority of my follower and fan base seems to be more libertarians. It seems to be actually an accurate demographic of fees readers, because I believe a lot of them are libertarians, or at least Republicans who are liberty minded. So that's the majority of my base now.
That's fantastic. Well, you've had such an interesting background. We're so excited to dig into it a little bit more. I have a lot of questions to ask you, but we're going to go to Kaylie next and let her tell her story, and we'll be back with you shortly. Hey, Kaylie.
Hey,
I'm so
everyone.
excited for
First of
everyone to
all,
hear your background.
sorry about my voice, first of all. Hi, I am Kaylie Keim. I am 20 years old, and I'm a student at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I grew up in Marin County, California, and my childhood, I was constantly surrounded by nature. I was surfing, hiking. I was always outdoors. When I went into high school, I really had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I thought maybe I could be a college athlete. I had no idea. And I remember so vividly taking my first marine biology class and watching a documentary called Blackfish, and seeing firsthand all the corruption and the problems that are going on within our government and within the environment. And I was spurred to make a change. And that's when I really started getting into social media, environmental activism. I was emailing legislators like Dianne Feinstein against oil drilling, and I just thought, wow, like I want to spread the word about this. Like these are issues that I want more people to be aware of. And the first thing I could think of was just putting it on my Instagram. And back then I had maybe 1,000 followers. And so I've been doing this since I was about 16 years old, and it's really taken me to places I never thought that I would be. I think that committing to the University of Hawaii was really cool for me with my social media, because I was able to, give my followers a visual representation of what I was talking about environmentally. So with microplastic pollution, non-reef safe sunscreen, big issues like that, I was able to actually show my followers firsthand, the problems that are going on because of the location that I was at. And yeah, so through my social media, I have just, been taking places, again, like I've never expected to be. I've been working for Ocean. I worked for the American Conservation Coalition for a little bit. I know now I'm here with FEE, and social media is a really powerful tool if you use it for good. And yeah, so.
You mentioned that and I think you told me this beforehand too, that one of your first kind of big posts was that you had said something to Dianne Feinstein. She responded to you about your post. Can you talk about that a bit more?
Well, there was this oil drilling that was coming out where they were using heavy explosives underwater to look for oil, and that deeply affected whale migrations, and whales are washing up dead, and whales are extremely endangered. And when I saw that, I was like, why is that allowed? Like, who is letting this happen? And I did my research, and I reached out to Dianne, and she responded personally. So that was so incredible, and I just wanted to share it with everyone. And I got so much positive feedback, and that's what spurred me to keep doing it. I would be posting multiple things a day about the environment.
Yeah, I really like that you've picked this issue area, because I think there's so much potential for people to come together on it. I'm somebody who really always tries to find ways that I can connect with people, no matter what their political persuasion is, and the environment is something that matters to a lot of people. And what you observed about being able to give people a tangible representation of what you were talking about, I think is so key. I also saw Blackfish and was incredibly moved by it. I wasn't really somebody who had paid that much of attention to these kinds of issues before, and I kind of felt like I became an animal rights activist overnight after I saw that documentary, because it was just so shocking. But when you see these things, when you hear these stories, it's powerful. And social media has that element where you can provide people with these visuals and with these stories and with an actual person they can connect with. And I think that when you're working in advocacy, goes a really long way to making people want to get more involved and actually feel connected.
Definitely. And
Go ahead.
So sorry. Oh, my voice is back. Basically, I think a huge thing about advocacy and conservation or anything is really finding what you're passionate about. I think that, because I grew up surrounded by nature, and because I had such a deep respect for animals since I was a child, it really helped me, be this passionate and create a career path around it. So I want to go into environmental law. I'd like to be an environmental lawyer one day. And I think that finding something that you're passionate about and you truly love and creating a career path about that and posting about it on social media is really, really important. So everybody's passions are different. For me personally, it's the environment, but everybody is different with that.
Mm-hmm. One thing I thought was cool in our preliminary talks was you mentioned that you had originally thought about maybe being a marine biologist, but then as you started working more in the environmental field, in large part thanks to your social media, you really did kind of grab onto this new pathway. Can you tell people a little bit more about what that means? I think when you say environmental law, a lot of people have no clue what that means, including me, until we talked about it.
So yeah, after that marine biology class, I became in love with marine science and learning about conservation. And I actually did an internship at UCSD with Scripps Institute of Oceanography, which was incredible for me. And I got to see firsthand what it would be like if I was a marine biologist. And I kind of had this realization that I would rather be out in the field, changing laws, trying to make laws, helping the environment on a legislative level. Especially being in Hawaii, there's so many things that I wish were banned, like non-reef safe sunscreen and stuff like that. So I think that with having a career path, it's totally okay if it shifts and changes. And so that's what happened with me. It completely shifted.
And I think you told me you got several of those internships or kind of roles where you got to try your hand at some of this through your social media, which is amazing.
I did. Yeah.
Very
so
cool.
It was really cool for me to be projecting what I love on social media and be having, don't get me wrong, I've had plenty of negative feedback too. Haters are the worst. But, creating such a positive outlet for people environmentally through my social media has created these incredible connections for me. And I did receive nonprofit collaborations and internships through my work on social media.
It's fantastic. It's funny to me that even if you're posting about something that is as happy and friendly as environmental issues, that you still get haters. But I think that that's hopefully encouraging to people. I love the quote that says you're going to be criticized anyway, so do what you think is right. And I think there's a lot of power to that. So kudos to you.
Definitely.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Kaylie. I'm going to bring Olivia back in and we're going to have a conversation, but we have a lot more questions to discuss. So what I find so cool about both of your stories is that your journeys really began by just simply pursuing issues and discussions and conversations around topics you cared about. And it reminds me of this great Ayn Rand quote that I've always loved, where she said, "My happiness is not the means to any end. It is the end. It is its own goal. It is its own purpose." And it sounds like your all's experience kind of mirrors that. You weren't necessarily pursuing the careers that you now have or the businesses that you've ended up with, but you were pursuing things that you cared about and that made you happy, and you ended up where you're at. Would you agree with that?
I would 100% agree with that. I think that the emphasis on doing it because it just makes you happy, not necessarily with the goal in mind to be famous or to even be successful, because I genuinely believe that the reason I got a platform and a large platform was because I kept it real. I didn't come across as fake or somebody who just wanted to manipulate followers or to grift off of followers. People genuinely wanted to follow me because I saw that I was a genuine person. And so that quote totally applies to me. And it seems like it applies to Kaylee as well, just because that field was a passion of hers as well.
Absolutely. Kaylie, did you have anything to add? I saw you nodding. Oh, we might have lost her. Oh, no. Okay, hopefully we'll work to get her back on. Olivia, I'll turn back to you for the time being until she gets back on. I will say it really does seem that you've found your niche through all of this. You've come into your own, and almost more importantly, you found a way to build a business around it and make money at a very young age. And that's, I think, really empowering. And I wonder at what point in the process, your social media, you realized it was becoming more than a hobby. Was there a single moment where you recognized this might just be more than me just posting?
Yeah. That actually happened this year because I'm not the person who came into it to monetize my platform, which is kind of to my point that if you come across that way, if you're begging for followers or begging for retweets or, begging for donations or whatever, when you don't have a lot of influence, then it comes across as pretty fake. And I've seen a lot of people make that mistake when they've tried to it only started not even a lot, but I only started monetizing significantly I would say in February, I started doing like a weekly YouTube live stream. I don't have a super large channel on YouTube. I have about maybe 3,300, like a little bit over 3,000 maybe. But a lot of my Twitter followers end up joining my live streams, and they started dropping super chats and started, dropping little donations during the YouTube live streams when I didn't ask. And I was like, oh, people actually want to pay me to speak about certain topics that they like. Like, this could actually be a real thing. So I started scheduling weekly live streams with interesting guests. I've had guests all across the political spectrum. I've had pro-Black activists, I've had communists, I've had anarchists, I've had Republicans, libertarians, really anyone who, also enjoys sharing a platform with people that they may not necessarily agree with, but would like to learn from and teach. So that's my goal when I do YouTube live streams, is to just educate myself and educate my audience and expose them to something that they probably have not heard before. And so people actually ended up appreciating this a lot and being like, okay, when's the next live stream? Like, schedule the next live stream. Who's the guest for next week? And then I find myself like emailing people, putting stuff on my calendar. Okay, like, I have this live stream at this time, this live stream at that time. I have to put up this donation link on here. And then I'm just like, whoa, this is a job now. Like, this is getting a little crazy. So from a couple years ago, just accidentally going viral, to fast forward to now, I'm talking to established influencers, even politicians, on my YouTube channel, and people are paying me to do so. Then it gets a little crazy. And even beyond that, I do now do public speaking events. Coming up in September, I have Maj Touré's Solutionary Summit, which is an annual summit I spoke at last year. And I'm at the point where now people are like flying me to places. And that, again, it's like a shock to me how it could actually turn into an entrepreneurial, prospect, where I'm getting paid to speak at places, or I'm getting flown out to speak at places just because I accidentally went viral a couple years ago. So I wouldn't say it was a conscious choice, everything I did between then and now to get to where I am, but I feel like that's kind of the key, if that makes sense. You can't come across as if you are trying to grift. That's like the big thing on Twitter. Nobody likes a grifter. Nobody likes somebody who doesn't have anything original to say, who just wants followers, or just wants sponsorships, or just wants donations for really nothing original. So all I did was keep it original, because even when I fell more into the MAGA camp, 2-3 years ago, I always had kind of unique opinions. And now that I'm completely like in my own little box, and people are always calling me, fake conservative, fake libertarian, which is fine. I don't think you can be a real libertarian if you have never been called a fake libertarian.
Exactly.
I think it's kind of like a rite of passage at this point. But doing all of that and kind of being in my own box, it actually provided me with a very strong fan base and audience, because you can't, not to sound cocky, but you can't get what I'm saying on any other page, because I'm saying something that's very unique to me, and I genuinely believe what I say. So yeah, I think that's the key to monetization, is just to be unique. Don't say outrageous things just for clicks. I mean, unique in a good, genuine way.
Absolutely. And I love following you for that reason. I think there's always so much independent thought there. I never actually know what you're going to say about something, or which angle you're going to take. So it makes it really interesting. And you make people think. And I think that that's what a lot of people are looking for in their political commentary, is so many people are just used to getting fed, the same old red meat. They're used to being in the kind of choir, and everybody's just preaching in the choir and telling them what they want to hear. And so when somebody steps up and actually says something different, I think it gets people's attention. Hey, Kaylie, so glad we got you back on.
Hey, yes, browser quit on me, my gosh. But Olivia, just to echo what you were saying, I completely agree with that. I think that the key to standing out is to just be yourself and be unique. And also to echo what you said about not saying crazy things for clickbait, I agree with you. I think that it's always good to keep it professional on your social media. If you're trying to monetize it and you're trying to get to that level, I think professionalism is really important. And I think that just being true to yourself and speaking your truth is really important.
And Kaylie, just to pose the same question to you that I posed to Olivia while you were away, is that, each of you have really found your niche through your social media and come into your own and found a way to even build businesses around it and make money from a very young age. And I'm curious at what point in that process you realized that your social might be more than just posting online and actually might be more than a hobby.
I think let me think about this. I would say that I had that realization when I was going into my freshman year at college, 2019. Um, that's when I started being reached out to by bigger nonprofits, and I realized, like, wow, this isn't something that, obviously this is something that I'm passionate about, and I do it for fun because I enjoy speaking about these problems. I enjoy spreading awareness, but like I can make this into a career for myself. And I think it took about a year for me to have that realization.
That's awesome. One thing I find really fascinating about both you and Olivia and your stories is that you didn't waste any time seizing the opportunities that began to come your way as a result of building the social media channels. And I don't know that everybody would do that. I think some people would say, wow, I got 50,000 followers, and they would just keep posting selfies, but you guys really seized the day and didn't leave it there. And I think that that's impressive. And I wonder if you can, Olivia, I'll go to you first. Can you tell us about some of the work you've garnered from your social media channel and how those roles have positioned you for what you ultimately want to do?
Yeah, for sure. So, like I mentioned before, I do my weekly YouTube live stream. I've gotten several speaking positions and speaking gigs off of that. I've gotten multiple internships off of that. And I've discovered that not only do I have a passion for electoral politics, working on campaigns and things, but I also do have a strong passion for media and for writing. So I grew up, in high school. I was always a passionate creative writer, but I never imagined writing about political topics. So it was about a year and a half ago where I got my first writing internship at the Daily Caller, and I kind of used that as a launch pad to connect with, other media outlets in the conservative or libertarian sphere. Especially being here outside DC, it's been very convenient for me to meet with politicians, meet with influencers, meet with journalists, just because I have a social media platform. And this is a very interesting observation I've made, but people who may seem much more important than you are likely to respond to you just because you may have a lot of mutual friends with them or have a lot of the same followers or fan base that they do. So I've gotten in touch with some very amazing people just because I speak my mind and have a large platform on Twitter. So I do highly recommend to anyone who, wants to get more involved in political media or electoral politics to use that platform that you've given yourself. In addition to, the internships and speaking opportunities and things like that, I've also had several media appearances. My most recent large one, I was featured on the pilot episode of an HBO late night talk show called Pause with Sam J. They had found me via social media. They liked my tweets. They had seen my YouTube videos, and they were doing a episode on Black conservatives. So if I had never had that platform, if I had never put myself out there and attached my name and attached my face to my somewhat unique and controversial beliefs, then that would have never had happened. And even to get the Fee Hazlitt fellowship position, Hannah DM'd me on Twitter, and that's how I applied. So Twitter is just the main thing I've used for any job opportunity, any connection over the past 2 or 3 years, at least. So yeah, it's been kind of a ride. Everyone I am connected with is basically through Twitter. I would love to grow my Instagram page, as Kaylie has done. It seems like it's a learning curve for me because I don't post on Instagram very often, but I've been doing it over the last few months. And interesting that, Hannah, you said that you have no idea what I'm going to post sometimes because I'm always posting something that's a little out there. And that's funny because people have been saying that to me all the time recently, all the time. And to me, it's never a surprise because I already know what I think, right? But I didn't really realize how controversial some of my, opinions were until I put them out there. But I do think it's worth it, even though I do get some backlash for it, because, for every rude troll comment I get that's against my beliefs, I do have 3 or 4 or 5 comments that are like, huh, I never thought of it that way before. You put that into perspective for me. And that in itself has provided me with a lot of career and job opportunities as well.
Yeah, and I don't even think you post anything controversial. I almost always agree with you, but I like that you don't toe a certain party line and that you don't really align yourself with any tribe but your own. You really think for yourself, and you have your beliefs, and you're not afraid to come out with them, and I just think that's fantastic to see, and it's a breath of fresh air. And I think the really cool thing is I have to remind people, like, you're still in college and you're getting all this amazing experience, and it's just really impressive to see you grow your own name and your own business. And I think so often about people who are coming off college and they can't get jobs, and it's like, you're not going to be faced with that because you've already started your own entrepreneurship and have already started forging your own path while you're still in school. And I love that. I think it's really empowering. I know it's probably empowering for many young women who look up to you, so I appreciate your advocacy and being that kind of example. Kaylie, one thing I think is interesting about you is that even though you had this platform, you were kind of thinking about going a certain way with it, and then you ended up changing course, as we discussed in your introduction. And one thing I think is really interesting about that is that so many people, either while they're still in school or when they graduate, really struggle with finding the right pathway. And a lot of people end up going back to school. A lot of people end up wasting a lot of money on second degrees. And you kind of skipped that process because you were able to start getting real hands-on experience early on through your social media, and then were able to figure out a different pathway. I know that was true for me. I had graduated and was working in music and just absolutely hated it. And when I wanted to switch paths, it took a lot of work and effort and volunteering for a number of years to be able to then move out of music into politics. You were kind of able to save yourself that suffering and able to really figure out early on what you wanted to do. Can you talk about that a little bit more in depth?
Absolutely. I think that, again, the point that I've made is really following your passions and following what you love. I think that in life, it's really hard to sit at a job that you're not passionate about and you're not happy with. And I think that it's really important to make decisions for yourself based on what makes you the most happy. It's really interesting for me. I would say my social media, like the advocacy that I've done on social media, has actually forged a career path for me. As Olivia was saying too about, getting in touch with important people with electoral stuff, I was reached out to by an amazing women's rights representative in Hawaii on Instagram, and that gave me a fellowship with the governor of Hawaii this past semester. And it was incredible for me to really see how the government works, firsthand. And if I wasn't an advocate on my Instagram, who knows if I would have even gotten that opportunity. But regarding changing courses, again, I would just say follow what you love, follow what you're passionate about, and you can completely make a career for it. And, never be afraid to try something new. It was definitely scary for me to be posting the stuff about environmentalism on my Instagram, especially because I have a lot of very Republican friends. And I got some interesting backlash from them, but realizing that, like, hearing their side of things was very, very, very important for me. As Olivia was saying too, like, you get a different perspective, and it's important to hear that because you learn things that maybe you had no idea about. So facing haters and staying true to yourself and taking risks like that is really important, because you never know where that's going to lead you with your career, and you never know which connections that you're going to make from that.
Absolutely. Young people get a lot of messages these days that the deck is stacked against them, that it's hard to succeed on your own merit. And I know I've even dealt with that. I've seen people say, oh, you only have your career because of your parents. Like, my dad's a pastor. No. Or they'll say that people, can't grow successful businesses or can't be entrepreneurs without some kind of nepotism or corruption. And I just see those kind of messages everywhere. But from my perspective, thanks to the age of information, thanks to the advances in society, and thanks to technological advances, there's really never been a better time to be an entrepreneur and to really take control of your own destiny and have more direct inroads to success. And I think that you two are both really great examples of that. But I'm curious if you can talk, well, first, I'm curious if you agree with me that there's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur. But secondarily, I wonder if you can talk about some of the barriers you've had to overcome as a woman or as a young person in forging your path. Kaylie, I'll start with you.
Okay, perfect. I completely agree with your statement. I think that this is really the time to be an entrepreneur on social media. There's so many incredible resources and so many fun ways to speak about what you're passionate about. Like TikTok, for example, is awesome. Regarding barriers that I've received, I think that when I was younger and I started posting about environmental things, I was almost made fun of by, you know, peers, not necessarily a bad way, but they didn't really take me seriously. And it was tough for me to kind of rise to the point where people really took me seriously and took what I was saying, with a grain of salt. And I think that being in high school and posting things that may be controversial, it can be tough and you definitely will receive backlash, but it's important to like stick to it. But yeah.
Olivia?
I also 100% agree that now is the time to be an entrepreneur. Like I said, you don't even have to be purposefully trying to become one. So imagine if you logged onto social media and made an account right now with that in mind and with those strategies in mind. I mean, I think you can find success even, much faster than I did. So just the key is to remain genuine, I should reiterate. And I've found it to be very beneficial for me. As Kaylie said, you find a fellowship with other entrepreneurs and with other people who are very influential in that field. And you also receive backlash. And some of it is very interesting. Like she said, she received some backlash from, very staunch Republicans. But at the same time, I'm sure they were introduced to um, somebody who doesn't share their same beliefs and may have positive on protecting the environment, which is what she's passionate about. In my case, a lot of staunch Republicans who did follow me back when I was basically not even identifying with any certain ideology, just really not a Democrat, and that may be very popular with the MAGA camp. But a lot of them will give me some backlash now because I'll talk about things. Most of them have to do with my articles for fee, actually, but I'll talk about things such as qualified immunity or the war on drugs or the end on foreign wars and things like that. And I will get backlash, but again, it does expose people to things that they may not have heard about before or may not have thought about before. And so the entrepreneurial opportunities just come my way when I am providing that unique voice. So if I could give a piece of advice to people who are trying to become a social media influencer or entrepreneur or to monetize their platform that they've built, is to, again, be a genuine and unique voice and provide something that isn't already being provided, because there are a lot of big accounts on social media. It is difficult to become an influencer, but they're not few and far between, but a lot of them are saying the same thing. So if you are like Kaylie, who may not be a super far left liberal, but she's talking about things like the environment, like animals, like the oceans, which is completely dominated by the far left, and she's providing this outlook to people at fee where the majority of their readers are libertarian or Republican, then that is, an amazing opportunity. So I kind of do the same thing with me, but for other ideas. So if you can find a way to market a certain idea to a group that isn't so passionate about, but you want them to be, then that is just a great opportunity if you can find it.
Thanks, Olivia. And that actually segues really well into my next question, which is about cancel culture. Cancel culture is something that I think everybody has at the top of their heads lately, especially young people. We see study after study show that young people are extremely concerned about cancel culture, and it makes sense as a lot of them are just starting their careers and hoping to get hired. I'm curious as to young people who are not only very online, but who are also political online. Is that something you worry about? Is that something you deal with? And how do you overcome those fears? Kaylie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's absolutely something that I've dealt with. Echoing what Olivia just said, I am not an extreme liberal. I would say I'm very in between. I lean more conservatively. And being an environmental activist and having that name for myself, people assume that I am very far left. And so when I'm talking about ideals that are more conservative, I get a lot of hate for it. Even when I explain it in a very professional way and it makes sense, I still will get people that will cancel me. And if anything, I think that it's really important to go through those types of things. I think that having any sort of negative backlash is a huge growing point for people because there's negativity everywhere. I think cancel culture is terrible though, and I wish that it wasn't as prevalent as it is right now. But I think it's important to go through those things and to understand that everybody has a different perspective and not take it so seriously. And if anything, use it, to grow and use it to be more passionate about what you're saying. And if anything, hearing other people's perspectives raises questions within yourself on, okay, maybe I can explain this better. If that's what people are feeling, how can I, explain it in a way that makes sense to them? So I think cancel culture is terrible, but, don't take it too seriously. It happens to everyone.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it often does come from a place of people not being willing to listen to things they don't agree with or to actually have true tolerance. So, Olivia, do you have a response to that one?
Yeah, I would say the way I combat cancel culture is by not participating in it because I believe that the people who are frequently getting canceled are people who are quick to cancel other people. So, a great example now would be Chrissy Teigen, who, is a famous model, but is super, super, super famous on Twitter, and especially for, dragging people and canceling people and shaming people, possibly for, older posts that they made years back. And everyone's made older posts years back that they probably wouldn't even remember if somebody showed them a screenshot today. And now she's been in the spotlight recently for being canceled for older posts she made, over 5-10 years ago. So the way I feel like I've said a lot of things that to the left or to anyone who's not, um, uh, you know, a Republican or Libertarian, that would be very easily canceled. I've said very controversial things about race relations, about the LGBT community. Nothing hateful, but some things that are just not politically correct to say in the current climate, especially for somebody in my demographic. But nobody can cancel me because I don't participate in it. People will post my screenshots all the time. People will be in the comments like, oh, you're a bigot, you're transphobic, you're homophobic, all these basically essentially slurs that the left will use to silence people who are more on the right. And I just don't entertain it. I don't apologize. I don't say, oh, I'm sorry, I will learn from my mistakes, because I genuinely believe what I say. So the way I don't get canceled is just don't give them any power, because and also, I maybe am speaking from a place of privilege because all your opportunities are on the right side of politics. So something that I might get canceled for on the left is something that I might be praised for on the right. But that's another piece of advice I would just say: surround yourself with other entrepreneurs and other influencers, of people who may agree with you on some of these cancelable beliefs and posts. I know it's easier said than done because, as Kaylie said, a lot of her followers and a lot of her fans may be more left leaning because she speaks about things like protecting the environment, protecting animals. Uh, but again, I would just say don't give them any power. Don't apologize for saying that you have conservative beliefs, because if you give in to the mob, it doesn't really stop the cancellation. I've seen it happen a dozen times.
I think that's actually very, very solid advice. And I think, my own strategy for that has always been I don't post things I don't stand by. I've thought through things I've posted, I stand by them. And I think that if you are really strong in your convictions, I do think that's a good way to push back. I'm going to pause my questions for you guys because we have a lot of interest from the crowd and people who have other questions for you all. So I'm going to bring in some audience questions. A reminder to others in the audience that we are happy to take your questions. So please go ahead and submit those if you have them. I'm going to work through a few that we've already gotten, and I'll let you each respond to these. The first question is, how do you avoid the temptation of engaging with ideological opponents in a discharitable way? It seems like easy content, but contributes to the polarization we see. I think everyone on this panel is really good at avoiding these temptations, so I'm curious about your strategy. Olivia, you talked about that a little bit already, but do you want to add anything to what you said?
Yeah, for sure. So there are people of any ideology that I will happily have a conversation with, that I will happily platform. I have platformed people on my channel who I completely disagree with on economics, or I completely disagree with them on public policy, but we are both respectful. I will say this though, maybe I'm not the best person to answer that question, because sometimes when people like to come at me on Twitter and they think they're being smart with a little drag, like, oh, this is a very common one. Oh, you're voting for people, or you're supporting people that are racist and homophobic and would never support you, that don't even like you. I really don't have patience for people who come at me with ad hominems, or people who come at me where they're not coming from a genuine place of genuinely asking, why do you support these people? They're just coming out straight with the accusations. So sometimes I don't give a very professional response. I'm trying to cut back on that. But in terms of straight up just ideologies, I will respond to anyone. I will talk to anyone. So I think the majority of it is just remaining open minded, because I have a very controversial ideology. I would not like if somebody would not have me on their show because I'm a conservatarian or conservative or libertarian, whatever you want to call me. If I was very adverse to talking to people who are more left leaning, then I would have never made it onto that HBO show, because the host was not a right winger at all. So I think it's a little cliche, but the golden rule: do unto others as you would like to have done to you. So I would always like to platform people, or at least have a conversation, or spare a couple replies for somebody who has genuine questions, even if they disagree with me. Because I would want the same done to me if I wanted to, ask somebody, why do you support this policy, or why do you support this legislation?
Yeah, those are such great points, Olivia. And I know, from my perspective, having done a lot of grassroots advocacy as well, I've often been able to work with people on both sides of the aisle. And so while I might strongly disagree with them or not like a certain post they have, I'm always cognizant of the fact that, they could be an ally on something else. Kaylie, would you like to address that question as well?
Yes, I think that a big part of responding to people that have different ideals is respect. I think that, first of all, if you're going to get into a conversation with somebody that has opposing views as you, it's really important to be completely educated on the view that you were speaking of. And I think that the number one thing is, if they are not being respectful towards you, maybe just don't even respond. Don't even give them the time of day. What Olivia was saying, don't give them that power. But if they are trying to have a respectful conversation with an opposing view, then I think it's important to talk about it, because, again, you never know if they could be an ally with something else. So I think that's the number one thing, is be respectful. And if somebody is coming at you with negativity and disrespect, then don't even deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's solid advice. Use the mute and the block button. They're there for a reason, and you don't have to tolerate people who are mistreating you or being ugly. And I think you can tell people who are there to have an intellectually honest conversation and who are operating in good faith, versus those who are maybe trying to troll or who are just going to be hateful no matter what. The next question is for both of you, and this commenter asked, are you aware of any curriculum to help high school students become social media entrepreneurs, or would you be open to writing some? Olivia, I'll kick it back to you.
I'm not aware of any. That is an interesting idea. I've actually thought about, writing a blog post, nothing really long form, just, some key pointers and tips, because I honestly don't feel like I'm an expert. I'm not a super mega influencer. I don't have millions of followers. I have, a few thousand followers, like 56,000 followers. So I don't know if I'm in a place where I could write a whole book about it or do a whole series about it, just because I'm still learning. As I said, it's a learning curve. I'm still trying to increase my opportunities and entrepreneurial ability using my platform. But maybe someday in the future, I would be more comfortable giving more advice. I think I'm in a place where I would like to learn more before committing to something so long form. But I would be open to writing an article or maybe a Twitter thread about it, with just some of my best pointers and tips that I've mainly already said here, but just so more people could read it.
I would definitely read that, Olivia. Kaylie, would you like to respond?
In my opinion, I mean, obviously right now I don't think that there's any curriculum with social media. I think that what's really important is taking writing courses, public speaking courses. I think that all of that can definitely aid in activism and posting things online and social media and being well written and well versed. As Olivia was saying, I don't think that I am, necessarily in a place where I could write something about that. I think that I definitely have pointers and stuff like that, but I think that I still need a lot more practice at this before I can, sit down and actually write a book or something about it. But other than that, I don't think that there's any curriculum for it. I think that there should be, though, because social media is becoming so prevalent and so important. So I'm definitely sure there's going to be something in the future about it.
Absolutely. And I will say that Fee.org has a lot of resources and educational material around many great things, including entrepreneurship. So I would definitely check out Fee online and look for some resources there. But I think both of you could also provide excellent content down the road. So I'll look forward to that. The next question says, I love animals and have tried starting campaigns around where people and humans can be united instead of using shelters. Also, drivers who could not only move around people, but also take food to pets so the poor could keep their animals. What suggestion would you give to someone to be able to start being an advocate or starting a campaign like this? Kaylie, I'll go to you first.
Oh my gosh, that sounds incredible. Whoever wrote that question, keep at that. That is amazing. That's an incredible idea. I would say raising money, GoFundMe. That's a great platform. Petitions, getting involved with your local legislative leaders, anything like that. I mean, everything is different from state to state and town to town, obviously, with their laws. But if you can figure out a way to have the government help you out with that, that would be incredible. And just raising awareness on social media, getting people to fall in love with the idea that you have. And for me, at least, I always love to create an emotional connection between the animal that I'm advocating for and my followers. I think that people have an emotional connection to what you're talking about. It makes them more keen to get involved with the problem that you're speaking about. So I would say GoFundMe, petitions, getting involved with your local government, and just spreading awareness on social media as much as you can.
Olivia, you've done a lot of issues advocacy and on the ground work. Do you have any advice for that person?
Yeah, Kaylee actually made a lot of good points that being a social media influencer, it's at least 50% doing stuff in real life. So, call your local legislators, get in touch with people in the government, and get in touch with people in the community. And so I do have a lot of experience working on legislative campaigns and political campaigns as well, door knocking, canvassing, electioneering, um, canvassing, all of that. So those are some things that I do. I am well versed in. I haven't posted about it a lot because it doesn't seem like it would be something my audience would be interested in. But maybe if people are interested, I would give some more tips and tricks on that. But another good point that Kaylee made was to create an emotional connection, because that definitely encourages people to donate to your cause or to support your cause or to call and campaign and canvass on behalf of you. And so one important thing that I kind of tried to convey to my followers was that, and this is not even really politically related, but I do an annual wrestling camp in Southeast DC, which is kind of the inner city. And I started doing it in 2019. And then we did intramural wrestling in the public schools there, which was the only intramural wrestling program in Washington, D.C. They don't have scholastic wrestling there for public schools. So we were doing a really good thing. But because of COVID, everything shut down. But instead of, kind of sulking and crying because I couldn't do my wrestling program, we decided to do a food pantry. And I started noticing that a lot of the same kids that were coming to the community center for wrestling last summer were coming to the community center because they couldn't eat because their parents lost their job due to COVID. So that made me emotional. So I decided to share my journey working with the charity all last summer online. And I encourage people to come out. I encourage people to donate to support the DC Dream Center, which is where the charity was held at. And now, fast forward, COVID restrictions are being lifted. I'm trying to open up my wrestling program again. It's still up in the air because we could be held liable for infection rates if we hold it indoors. But I'm pushing for us to hold it outdoors, which would do away with that liability. But now I have so many people banging down my doors, essentially, in my DMs, begging to donate, begging to support this wrestling program because they know how hard it was for these kids to go through last year without this wrestling program. And because I was posting pictures of and videos from the wrestling program, posting pictures of the food pantry and things like that, people became very emotionally invested in it. People are asking for updates on the wrestling program, asking for updates on the DC Dream Center. And that kind of happened by accident. I was just posting, what I was doing every day, which was volunteering. But it kind of turned into a really big thing to now where if we are able to have the camp this summer, it could be fully funded by literally just people on Twitter. So it would just be an amazing opportunity for these kids. So, if you're sponsoring an animal or anything with the environment, I feel like you can do something very similar, as Kaylie said.
That is so exciting, Olivia. Congrats on that. I really like this next question. The commenter asked, do you have any advice for posting about extremely serious topics? As someone who wants to be a vet, if I start an Instagram account, how should I approach topics such as animal abuse or lowering the kill rate for shelters? And do you have any advice on how to ignore and overcome the hate?
I would say for this question, again, coming from somebody that has posted very graphic photos of, whaling and stuff like that, I mean, it's important for people to see it. The more you hide the reality of what's going on, the less activism is going to come from that. I guess the biggest thing for what I've been doing is you got to show what's really going on. It's the reality of life, and that's what's going to make people passionate to change it. You don't want to hide the truth from people, and yeah, there are things that are really ugly that are going on in the world right now, but some people don't even know that that's existing. There's been so many environmental topics that I had no idea was going on until I had to see a graphic documentary to change my life. So, when it comes to being a veterinarian or anything with animal abuse and shelters that are killing animals, I think that it's really important just to post it as it is. And obviously, if it's super graphic, Instagram will probably take it down, but I think it is important for people to see the reality of what's happening. And then when it comes to shelters killing animals and stuff like that, I would say that if you my gosh, I'm blanking on what I was about to say because my voice just went out. The point I was trying to make is that we as citizens have the right to testify for bills to become laws. And this is a point I was going to make when the last question is every legislative session, if there are bills that are being introduced that will help your cause, we as citizens have the right to testify for or against that bill. And that is something that I was doing in my internship this past semester, and it really does make a difference. So if you're staying on top of your politics, your local politics, and you see a bill that's being introduced that could help, stopping animals being killed in shelters, go testify for that bill. I think that's really important. So that's the other piece of advice I have.
Olivia, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, so like I said before, I'm not a huge Instagrammer like Kaylie is, but I do think that there is an advantage to posting about serious topics on Twitter because Twitter usually does not take down graphic posts or graphic images. You can definitely post images to get into someone's mind that whaling is wrong, that shelter killings are wrong. I think much better on Twitter just because they don't censor as much as Instagram. However, the way that I tend to talk about serious topics, and I usually do not post graphic images because that's just not what I talk about. But as I was saying before, when I write for Fee, I generally choose very, very blatant examples of misconduct and brutality and mistreatment by the government. So the most recent post I put up was an article about a woman whose SUV was rammed and flipped over for speeding by a state trooper in Arkansas. Now, this is a very heavy topic. The woman was actually pregnant, and thank God she actually gave birth to a healthy baby. But it's a very serious topic, which could have been potentially fatal, and it made a lot of people angry. A lot of people were upset by it, but it's a thing that you have to post about serious topics to make people see the issues, because the issue that I was explaining was that qualified immunity should be abolished because it protects these bad apples. Because of course, not every person who's in law enforcement is a bad apple, but there are protections in place that shield the actual bad apples from facing consequences. And so sometimes people really need you to shove a very blatant example in their face of something that could have been very tragic, to get that point across. So if for you, if that's posting pictures of whaling incidents or animals being, neglected, that might be the way to get it across. For me, it's usually me posting instances of gross misconduct by the government, especially in terms of COVID lockdowns or the war on drugs or police brutality, anything like that. So As long as you're posting about it in a serious manner and in a way that makes people look at it and they're not thinking, oh, this person is just trying to use this example to grift off of this opportunity, or this person is misrepresenting this very serious example, then you should be fine. I think as long as you go straight to the point, then go.
Really solid advice, ladies. Thank you. Our next question says, what's the best advice you can give to today's influencers so that their content has a positive impact on people? Anybody want to go first?
Yeah, I can go. To have a positive impact, the main thing that I try to do is I consciously try to use my platform for good. And the most recent example of that is I had a human trafficking survivor and advocate, Eliza Blue, on my YouTube live stream about 2 weeks ago. And it was a charity live stream. We raised money for the charity Rights for Girls, and we donated that, all the the stream proceeds, and we also had the link to donate overlaid on the stream. And this charity is something that raises money to help victims of sexual assault, abuse, harassment, trafficking, things of that nature. And it's a very heavy topic, and this is not an area of my expertise. I don't know a lot about the laws or the statistics or, the ways in which traffickers move or anything really about that. But as somebody who has been touched by harassment and abuse in their life, as many other young women do, it's a very common thing. It's almost an epidemic at this point in our country. I felt like it was my place to platform Eliza and to raise money, even though it really wasn't my area of expertise. Just because if I have a certain amount of followers, I do want to raise money and awareness for things that I may be passionate about, but I'm not qualified to speak on myself because I'm not a trafficking survivor. Eliza was. She was able to provide that insight. And then after that, I was very inspired to post and retweet a lot of hotline numbers onto my page to my 56,000 followers, like the human trafficking hotline, the missing child hotline, things like that. And she really did educate me on how those hotlines actually work, on the statistics on how those hotlines actually help people. And so a lot of, using your platform for good isn't even what you personally are doing. It's who you can kind of provide a platform to, because I don't want to come across as somebody who thinks they're a genius in all other subjects, because I'm not. But in the meantime, while I'm getting educated, I do want to provide a platform to people who can be a positive influence and to raise money and awareness for their causes as well.
That's really cool, Olivia. I love that you did that. Kaylie, would you like to add anything? Oh, she might be frozen. Okay, we'll keep moving. Another question is, how do you know when the path you chose to being an entrepreneur is the right one or the successful one?
I don't know. I don't know if I ever kind of decided on, okay, this is the right path to go. I know it's something that I'm passionate about doing. I know it's something that I won't stop doing anytime soon, but I also know it is difficult. It's not for the faint of heart. But I guess where I realized that, hey, I think I can actually do something with this is when I started reaching pretty influential people. And honestly, every day I'm like, am I going to post something that's going to make this random congressman unfollow me? But apparently they don't. So apparently I'm getting to somebody, I'm getting some important ears or some important eyes on my topics and my videos and my posts. So once I realized that people who are clearly smarter and more successful than me like what I have to say and want to give me a platform as well, and want to put me on TV and want to put me on the news and want to pay me to, speak at an event or to talk to voters, that's when I realized, I kind of got over the imposter syndrome, if you will, that I actually do belong in this space, at least for the time being. And then I could continue to get bigger and monetize as I see fit, and also continue to platform really cool people like Eliza and other people that I just want to promote and share my platform with. Because I think that something that is severely lacking in the influencer space is that everyone feels like they have to be alone, or everyone feels like they have to have drama or beef with somebody else. And I don't really play that game. I am all for people sticking together and showing a united front wherever they can agree. Just as I said before, I have platform people who I completely disagree with on politics. But if they, have a good point, such as, ending sexual abuse or human trafficking, then I will gladly put them up there. So once I realized that I can connect with people on a level like that, I was like, you know, this is probably the right path right now for me, and I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah, you definitely are. And I love that you mentioned that because I have the same reaction. There's a few people who have followed me that I just really look up to and think are amazing. And so I always have in the back of my mind, like, what if they unfollow me? What if they don't like what I have to say? And getting over that
I know.
is its own process.
I'm like, which one is going to be the post? Which
right.
one?
What's going to turn you off? Hey, Kaylie, welcome back. Hi. I'm trying to remember which question we were at. I believe we were at what's the best advice you can give to today's influencers so their content has a positive impact on people?
So the thing that I do is when I'm talking about something serious or sad, I like to, I educate people on the problem, why it's upsetting, why we need to save the animal that's being affected by it. But then I give people a solution, whether that's a petition in my story, like I do a little link to a petition, or an account to support and stuff like that. I feel like, talking about things that are hard and serious are important, but giving people a solution to the problem is just as important, and that creates a positive impact, and it leaves, a positive taste in somebody's mouth after that. It's like, okay, there's something that we can do to fix the problem that's so sad, versus just looking at a story and being like, wow, that is really depressing, but there's nothing we can do about it. So
yeah, that's good advice. And the other question you missed was, how do you know when the path you chose to be an entrepreneur is the right one or the successful one?
I think that if you get caught up in the question of if you're going to be successful, it can take you off the path of doing what you're passionate about and doing what is, what's right. I think for me, my number one priority has been, okay, I really want to change these things going on in the environment. I really want to save the endangered species. I want to help the indigenous peoples in Hawaii from what's going on. And whether I'm successful or not, if I can sit back when I'm older and look at these problems and say, wow, I really made an impact on that, I really changed something, that to me is real success. And I think that you can make success wherever you go. If you're passionate about it and you feel like you're doing what's right, success will follow you no matter what.
Absolutely. Okay, this next question is kind of fun. I like it. It's a little bit outside the box. And they asked, having a conservative ideology or any right of the aisle ideas, how do you go about your social and romantic relationships? More so in a place where you might think more political rivals would exist. I get anxiety when I think about this.
That's a good question. My political ideology has definitely caused rifts in my friendships and relationships over the years. But I've come to the point where I'm comfortable in my beliefs. If somebody, really has a problem with that, then that's fine. We don't have to be friends, or we don't have to be more than friends. And, the majority of my friends are not even people who I agree with. It may be like only a quarter of my friends would actually agree with me on the majority of the things I say, but I just surround myself by people who respect me and like me for the person that I am. And, I've honestly found more problems trying to be friends with people in the political sphere. As I said before, I'm right outside DC, and it's very dramatic here. Everyone has issues with everybody here. Even if you two might both be in the same political party or have the same or a similar ideology, it gets a little bit niche, if that makes sense. Like, even if you disagree with somebody on one little thing, then they all of a sudden, can't be seen in public with you anymore, because it's all about appearances here. So I would just say, don't put a lot of emphasis on it. I don't think people are necessarily good or bad people based on their political affiliations, outside of the very extremist ones. So, I would just say, to navigate that, don't put yourself out there like, I'm a conservative and you can't be friends with me if I'm not, or I'm a conservative and this is my whole personality, or I'm only going to talk about politics. Now, there are people on the left who are very intolerant of conservatives no matter what, no matter if they talk about politics, no matter if they actually agree with them on some issues or not. But I would just say, don't feel too hurt if those people don't want to be your friend or don't want to date you, just because those people are usually pretty insecure in themselves because they really only see people as political opinions or party lines rather than human beings. So I would say, you don't want that person in your life necessarily anyways.
Yeah, that's very good insight, Olivia. Kaylie?
That was nice, Olivia. Yeah, I mean, it's really sad that we've gotten to a point in society where somebody's political views determine if they're going to be in your life or not. And it's sad that people do get anxiety over this, and I think that a lot of it has to do with cancel culture. But I would say, like exactly what Olivia was saying, if somebody doesn't want to be in your life based on your political affiliation, obviously extremes are not a part of this, but if somebody is going to cut you out of your life because of that, then they shouldn't be in your life to begin with. Um, I think that I just think that people like that, is exactly what Olivia said, are not looking at you as a person, but like as something political. And I think that that is not how people should be. And it's sad that we've gotten to a point in society where it is. And if that's how they're going to treat you, then that's just how they are, and they're not meant to be in your life.
Yeah, I think that's great advice from both of you. But I like this question because it does remind us that, while so much of what we do and so much of where we spend our time these days is online, there are real life impacts. And we've seen that in very positive ways through both of your entrepreneurial pursuits. But there can be negative downsides too. And I think in order to balance that, you need to be very secure in who you are as a person and in your values. And again, for me, starting out really early on, coming out of music, going into politics, I remember a mentor, a very well-meaning mentor, told me I was doing some work around the Second Amendment, and he was like, "Ooh, you really might want to be careful around this. This could shut doors for you, or it might, shut off different opportunities." And I kind of had to make a decision of like, am I here to talk about the truth and to advance what I believe in, or am I going to cower? And I think once you sort of make up your mind about that, you kind of have a come what may attitude in life as well. Like, I think that the right things will come along, the right opportunities will come along, the right friends, the right romantic partners, but you need to be true to who you are. And I think there's something really heroic about that in a way, in a culture that wants to make everybody conform and kind of go with the flow. Being the person to stand up and say, no, this is what I believe, this is who I am, is commendable. And I want to say that having done it, and I know for both of you two having done it, I think the positives definitely outweigh the negatives most of the time. But I appreciate that question. Thank you to the commenter who asked that. The next question is, if you had to pick one social media platform that seems to be the most helpful for furthering your career, which would you choose? Now, you guys have each picked different platforms, so I think it'd be great for each of you to make a case for your platform here. Kaylie, can we start with you?
So I've actually never had a Twitter, so I don't really know how Twitter works. But Instagram, in my opinion, is really cool because you can share, posts about your life, and you can also put stories up that are really important. You can link petitions and stuff like that. I love Instagram just because I love the layout, and I love that it's all like permanent and it's not, a text, which is what Twitter is. I like having like a photo of something. I love photography. So yeah, I mean, I personally just love Instagram's aesthetic and, the connections from Instagram. And I like that I feel like, at least in my arena, it's a little more professional on Instagram because it's like, here's an important post, here's an important caption, I'm going to put something on my story. It's more professional. But again, I've never had Twitter before, so I can't speak about it.
Also, you probably never run out of content living in Hawaii, right? Like, you have no shortage of
never.
Beautiful things to post on Instagram. I'm in Atlanta, and there's a lot of pretty things, but I might run short. Olivia, can you make your case for your platform?
Yeah, well, I live in nasty Maryland, so there's nothing to post here. So Instagram would serve me no good if I was, a model or, trying to post nature pictures all the time, which obviously is beneficial to Kaylie's purposes. However, I will make my case for Twitter. Twitter does allow, video and image and media items. You can even post voice memos now. And they actually have a feature similar to Clubhouse, if you guys have heard of it, which is you can join a space and you can have a live conversation with, as many people as you want. So there are some very interesting features on Twitter now. You can link to outside websites very easily. Like on Instagram, I don't think in a regular timeline post you can put a link that is clickable. On Twitter you can. And also on Twitter you can reach anybody. It's much easier to reshare somebody's posts on Twitter and have a large reach than on Instagram. I know on Instagram it's pretty easy to share something to your story, but of course that goes away after a certain amount of time. And especially for somebody like me who is making content outside of Twitter, like writing for Fee or writing for the Daily Caller or posting YouTube videos, if someone cool, retweets my post, that can reach a lot of people. And one other thing is that a lot of, it seems like most lawmakers and most politicians, at least most large ones, use Twitter a lot more than Instagram, or it at least appears that way. And so the main way I've been able to get in contact with a lot of politicians and a lot of verified accounts is just by posting, and they see what I have to say. However, I will give a point to Kaylie, because Instagram does seem a little bit more professional just because it's much more curated. People post, people can post like 100 tweets a day. I know I have like 30,000 tweets, and I've been on Twitter since 2018. I have so many tweets, and it's not always the most professional or the most curated thing. A lot of it is just like me replying to somebody. But on Instagram, it's much more neat and organized. You can scroll through somebody's feed. Like I've scrolled through Kaylie's feed and seen like these bright, beautiful pictures of, Hawaii and the ocean and nature and stuff. And it looks like, you can see the type of page you want to follow. With Twitter, it's a little less straightforward. You might have to scroll a longer amount of time to get a general sense of the things that somebody posts, just because people post and retweet so much on Twitter. So there are some negatives and are some benefits, but I think in terms of politics, Twitter is the best place to be, just because all of the politicians, all of the other political influencers, for the most part, have verified accounts or have large accounts on Twitter.
I think you both make excellent points, and I would actually echo it. I actually use all platforms. I'm kind of all over the place, but I find benefits to each of them. Facebook, I think you reach the widest audience. You reach the largest number of people across age demographics, across racial demographics, across geographical locations. So I really like Facebook for grassroots advocacy. Twitter, I think, is the best place if you're trying to connect with grass tops. As Olivia said, that's where the politicos hang out. It's where the journalists hang out. It's where a lot of celebrities hang out with, and you might be able to network there. And I know I've gotten a lot of jobs and opportunities through Twitter. And then Instagram, I think, is really great for the younger generation and reaching people who are coming up and actually trying to connect with that demographic. So I would also say that, somewhat it depends on what your goal is and who you're trying to reach, which platform might work best for you. But I think it's really important to analyze that and think through it and then decide where you want to focus most of your attention. This next question we have is kind of a heavy hitter, but I really appreciate it. This commenter says, so as a young teen who is part of the LGBTQ community, I feel like I struggle to express my opinions due to pressure of the world. I get told I'm too young to understand politics and then that I'm too young to know my own identity. But I feel in this day and age that's just not true. Do you have any advice for the younger spectrum of people who struggle to express their opinions for whatever reasons? Olivia, can I go to you?
Sure. So I completely relate to that. As somebody who is a part of your community, the LGBT community, and somebody who recently came out like only a few months ago, I totally relate to that. I'm assuming, by younger teen, you mean like 14, 15, 16. I completely relate to you when I was that age, only a short time ago, where I felt very out of place. I felt like people were constantly treating me like a little kid and didn't want me to say my opinions. And I would just say to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there, but to also keep, I would say, like, practice a certain level of safety. Don't open up to strangers on the internet. I feel like I made that mistake when I first made my Twitter page when I was 17, that I would post things that people just were going to, use against me. Like, trolls were going to, if I posted a picture of myself where I felt like, I wasn't wearing makeup and it wasn't like, a cool angled picture, but it was just like something that I just wanted to share, and people would take that and use it against me. I would be like confused, like, why would people do this? And I'm not saying don't post pictures of yourself. I'm saying if you're posting something very personal that maybe you don't want people to see and like literally make a meme out of it, make fun of you, then don't post it. That would be the one piece of advice I would give to myself as a young teenager. And especially you, if you're a part of the LGBT community, there are a lot of people who are crazy about that online. Since I am in the right-leaning political sphere, I will say that I have been pleasantly surprised by the acceptance I've gotten, but also people are jerks. people are rude. So if you are posting something that is very near and dear to your heart, like a piece of your identity, like being in the LGBT community, I would just say be prepared for a certain level of backlash. It's not that you deserve it, it's not that it should happen, but it's just the reality of it. So that would be my advice. I would say don't feel scared because you'll get over it. You'll get over the hate. When I started posting, I was still in high school, and a lot of my former classmates found those posts, and they hated me for a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, but that kind of blows over in a couple months. High schoolers, teenagers, they have short attention spans, and no one's gonna hate you for that long. And eventually, everyone's gonna grow up. Everyone's gonna go to college. Everyone's gonna get jobs in the real world, and nobody really care anymore. So all I would say is be confident in yourself, but be prepared for a certain level of backlash depending on what you post. It's kind of a learning curve, and I'm still learning to this day.
I love that you brought that up, Olivia. That's really important that people, especially young people online, do protect their safety, protect their identity, and make sure that they're making conscious choices around that. Kaylie, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, definitely. As somebody who is not a part of that community, I will say I have seen recently a lot of positivity surrounding all of that, and I think that a huge benefit of social media right now is how much awareness and positivity that has been brought on in the recent few months regarding that topic. I mean, when I was 14 and 15 and 16, those were some of the toughest years of my life, just with my own character development and just navigating high school and friendships and people and drama. And I couldn't even imagine what it's like right now with COVID and how everything's on social media. But the biggest piece of advice that I would give is surround yourself with positivity and surround yourself with people that make you feel good about who you are. And there's so many resources and so many happy, positive Instagram accounts, I'm sure on Twitter, that uplift people in every demographic and every community. And you just really need to constantly surround yourself with positivity and people that uplift you, because as soon as you let the negativity in, it's really easy to dwell on it.
Absolutely. I think that's really great advice. So often we're in a society that wants to reduce people to certain characteristics about themselves or group them and say, oh, you're of this group or you're of this group, so you have to think this way or you must believe this way. And it can be really difficult to break out of that. I didn't have the same struggles, but I did grow up as a Southern Baptist minister's kid in the Deep South. And so I was very much in sort of a box and starting to break with people around me who tended to all sort of believe the same things. It was really hard at first, and it took some courage. But what I found over the years is that as a whole, while there has been some pushback and some hate, there also is a lot of really great conversations. And I've seen some of the same people in those crowds move on really important issues like criminal justice reform and other things that I was really passionate about. So I think it does take a little bit of a tougher skin, but I think as you keep going, you'll get more and more of that, and it will become easier. And I also think that as people come to see you as somebody who's not going to back down, who really is going to forge their own pathway and who has their principled beliefs, then I think the hatred dissipates, and instead you'll find that a lot of people are there to have more conversations, and the curiosity really starts to increase. So, but I love that question. I know being a young person right now is not easy, certainly not with social media. I want to thank both of our panelists for being here today. We're getting ready to start wrapping up, so before we close, I want to kind of give you all the last words, and if there's any approach on posting on social media that you want to share, any tips on creating an account, any last sentiments that you have for the audience, this is your space.
I would say, sorry, we're gonna go.
Go ahead, Olivia.
Oh, okay. I would say that the one thing that a lot of people don't do that I've found that has created a strong fan base for me is to, I know this contradicts a little bit of what I said before about, not sharing a lot of deep parts of yourself, but I would say a certain level of personality on your account is very necessary to grow people who actually like you, not just follow you, but people who would potentially follow you to a different platform or help you monetize your platform or offer you a job or offer you opportunities, because there are plenty of people with large accounts with 100,000 followers or 1 million followers on Twitter or Instagram because they say what the masses want to say, but nobody really knows them. They just follow the account because they like what they have to say. But there's a difference between following somebody and actually being a fan of somebody, and I think the reason I have certain people who would consider themselves like legitimate fans of me is because I do have a level of personality that I do share with my followers. Now, be warned, as I said before, if you show, show vulnerability, especially on Twitter, especially where I am very political, people tend to dehumanize people if they disagree with your politics. That's just human nature. So be prepared for people to make a meme out of your distress. But as long as you're prepared for that, I think the benefits greatly outweigh the cost, because people genuinely start to care about you. And I genuinely care about people that I literally only know off of Twitter, just because I've seen a lot of their life as they've grown, as they've changed over the years. So that would be my main piece of advice to growing not only a large following, but an actual dedicated fan base who, let's say if you got banned or got deleted off of Twitter one day, they would follow you to a different platform or follow you to a different account, because they genuinely like you, not only as a person, but as an influencer.
Absolutely. Kaylie, I'll give you the last word and then we'll close.
Perfect. The last few words I guess I would say is, one, find what you're truly passionate about and what you love, and go for it. Go all in, and everything will fall into place through that. Don't let any outside forces change who you are within. No matter what, no matter any negativity, any cancel culture, always stay true to yourself and what you believe in. If you're going to post something online, make sure you are educated on it. Do not make the mistake of talking about something controversial and not having the education to back it. So do your research, be positive, and keep the positivity going. Don't let any negativity affect you.
Great. Well, thank you both so much again. I think you're absolute rock stars. Make sure you follow Kaylie and Olivia online. And thank you so much again for being here. Remember to check out fee.org for more resources, and we hope to see you again the rest of this week.
Thanks for attending our session on how to be a social media standout. We hope you learn how to incorporate creativity and entrepreneurial thinking into your social media strategy. As a reminder, by attending this session, you have a chance to win a free iPad. Make sure to review the details in the post-program email. For more content, resources, and information that we covered today, check out Fee Online on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Join us tomorrow for our second session on how to build your career on creativity, featuring creative director Sean Malone, award-winning composer Austin Winery, and BioShock creator Ken Levine, who will teach you how to turn your creativity into currency. See you then!